Hello and welcome to CATSweek. I'm Martin O'Neill. At the Bloomington Historic Preservation Commission meeting on February 23rd, Historic Preservation Program Manager Gloria Colón-Braña shared a request for a demolition delay at 1017 South Walnut Street. Braña presented her historic research on the house.
The petitioner is requesting for demolition of the main house and garage. So staff basically put what I was able to find in my research. The first comments are from the resurvey, the Bloomington 2018 resurvey. So the front porch is under the main roof across the central bay, has a wood frieze, limestone columns, and half walls with stone caps. So some description there. Finding information on this house proved more challenging as it did not appear on the Sanborn maps. It was too far south from the city center or in the city directories until 1950, even though it was built much earlier. So in 1950, Jack and Leanne Dorsey, Jack was a painter, according to the directory, along with Julian and Lily Dorsey, and Julian was a stonemason, lived in this house along with a woman called Pearl Robertson, who worked as a cook at Indiana University. So all I could find was information at one point that different working class people lived in this space. And the building has been altered over time, and I believe the petitioner can speak more about structural conditions. But yeah, after the going over the documents, staff could not find enough supporting material to make a case for nomination, and therefore recommends release of the demolition delay.
Petitioner Michael Brodowski explained why he would like permission to do a full demolition of the main house and garage.
I own the building next door to this property, 1021 South Walnut. I have a recording studio in there. It's been there for 15 years. And we built 2 Airbnbs at the top level, and we have a big warehouse that we'll do something with. And basically this property, 1017 South Walnut, has been right next door to me, and the property line is actually 3 inches from my building. And I've seen it over the 15 years. It's been like a print shop. It's been like a DIY art space, and bands have played there. And then at one point, no one was there because it became too dangerous to be in the home. And it sat there unrented for a while. I found out who owned it, and I contacted them, and I spent 5 years trying to just acquire the property, because as a recording studio, if a developer or someone else were to buy that property and tear it down and start putting something up, I'd be out of business. So because of the noise. And I obviously wouldn't have any control over when that would happen, and it would be a disaster, especially with a 6-inch property line. So eventually it worked out. I was able to purchase the property. I did look into seeing if it was salvageable. Both the front and especially the back. The garage was turned into a little house. And I went in with a contractor I've worked with before, and I mean, they're pretty scary. And he said even if we did stripped it down to the studs, rebuilt it, and did everything you could, it's going to have structural issues forever. And so my plan is, at this point, I just want to demolish the property so it's not a liability. It is scary having it next door, and then level out the property, and I have no plans besides that at the moment. And that's about all I have to say, really.
Commissioner Doug Bruce said that he has seen the building degrade over time and would support the demolition.
I'm just down the street from this, and I've seen this house fall in disrepair and wondered about it. And I've seen over time the amount of, it has over time had people kind of living in it and coming in off the alley to the east side of it. And again, I hate to see it go, but you know, when a house has not been in a historic district, and it's just listed as contributing, we've tended to be a little less concerned. I know that's been an issue brought up before, but typically, if a house is just contributing and again not in a district, then we've allowed for full demolition. So, given the condition of the house, I support this petition.
Commissioner Sam DeSoler asked the petitioner to consider donating any salvageable and original materials from the house to the Historic Preservation Commission.
If there's anything existing in the house that's original that you would be willing to donate to BRI, that's always greatly appreciated. I am sad to see this one go, and I would encourage the owner to consider doing some development when you have it under your control. That'll fill in the missing tooth that's going to be left when you tear it down, but also won't disturb your recording studio. So if you can, long term, that would be lovely.
In response, Brodowski shared some plans he has for the property.
We've got some plans. We've considered a community garden. My studio's having a 20-year anniversary this summer, and we plan on having the concert celebration on the property as a community event, fundraiser for local charities. And eventually we might, if we do build something, we would be very conscientious of making it tasteful and contributing to the community.
The Commission voted unanimously to waive the rest of the demolition delay waiting period. The next Bloomington Historic Preservation Commission meeting will be held on March 9th. At the Monroe County Commissioners meeting on February 22nd, the Planning Department announced an upcoming meeting on March 23rd from 5:30 to 6:45 p.m.
Planning Department has been working on our county development ordinance, and we are going to host a focus group March 23rd from 5:30 to 6:45 p.m. This will be virtually only focus groups, and the public will have an option of choosing from one of the following topics, and they'll all be run concurrently together. So construction review, economic development, or environmental provisions. Each group will be hosted via Zoom, and we will have staff members there, possibly commissioners, plan commissioners, hopefully councilmen may show up. So again, this will be March 23rd from 5:30 to 6:45. We will be putting more information on our website, the www.monroecdo.com, and we will be recording those and taking any of those comments that we accumulate during those meetings to incorporate into the CDO. So, thank you.
The next Monroe County Commissioners meeting will be held on March 1st, and we'll have more from CATSweek right after this.
Do you know that thousands of children go without school supplies every day? Teachers Warehouse is a 100% volunteer-powered organization. We service the educational and creative needs of students in Monroe, Brown, Greene, Lawrence, and Owen counties by distributing school supplies free to the teachers. Teachers Warehouse is composed of 7 rooms filled with books, pencils, paper, and even tools to motivate students. If it's in a classroom, we'll supply it. To donate new or gently used school supplies or volunteer, give us a call at 812-929-7522 or email us at contact@teacherswarehouse.net.
Welcome back to CATSweek. The Bloomington City Council Committee of the Whole Climate Action Resilience Committee met on February 21st to continue their discussion on phasing out gas-powered machinery. Chair of the committee, Dave Rollo, introduced a discussion and summarized their objectives.
This committee has been discussing this topic, and it is, as I said, a component of our climate action and resilience plan. And so this committee is meeting in order to evaluate the phase-out of leaf blowers in the city as per the plan. And the plan discusses this type of strategy under TL1 L, and you can find that in the packet. I believe people have this packet that's been distributed to you. And the goal is to reduce citywide off-road and lawn equipment annual emissions to below 35,000 metric tons. Emissions from off-road equipment like construction and lawn equipment comprise a significant portion of fossil fuel consumption in Bloomington. Reduction of fossil fuel off-road equipment use is associated with improved emissions as well as improved air quality, particularly for the users of the equipment. And then it links a study from Edmunds.com, which actually leads to a page that doesn't exist, but I found the page, so that will need to be corrected. And then it goes into actions, and the actions are to replace city off-road and lawn equipment with electric and low-carbon fuel alternative options, and developing incentive programs for the city and the community.
City Attorney Stephen Lucas spoke on behalf of Public Works Department Director Adam Wason about the department's machinery.
Mr. Wason apologized for not being available tonight, but did provide a list of equipment, gas-powered equipment that Public Works currently has, is still working on an inventory of their electric equipment. Generally speaking, he shared with me that they are working on transitioning their equipment and expect to make several purchases this year for many of the smaller handheld types of equipment. He mentioned, I believe, the larger chainsaws and the surface grinders and other concrete saws that they have as equipment that they didn't think they'd be able to replace currently this year. Said many of the issues they had experienced in the last year or two in replacing their gas-powered equipment had to do with supply chain issues, just availability, and I'm trying to think if there's anything else he shared. I think that was everything.
Next, Rollo shared findings from a survey regarding stakeholder use of gas-powered and electric machinery.
So the question first was, does your business use electric equipment when available? Three respondents were no, one was some, and then two were yes. If your business does not use electric equipment, what are the primary reasons for using gas-powered or two-stroke oil-gas mixture equipment instead? Price point, efficiency, consistency, and overall more reliable, ease of maintenance and initial cost. Electrical equipment has not come far enough. It doesn't work as well and doesn't run for nearly as long. The quality of the equipment is not all the way there. To keep up with the usage during the day, it is going to take time for it to catch up. For certain heavy-duty uses, gas equipment is still necessary. Doesn't hold charge long enough, can't recharge mobilely. The third question is, what would it require for you to switch to some or all of your equipment to electric? Improvements in weather conditions, reduced costs, better technology, run times, another better technology. This stuff is relatively new on the commercial side to hold up to the amount of time it would be used. The additional cost to implement all of it with charging station, how to charge it on the job, and service providers. Funding would take care of replacing most equipment. For a few items, we would need the technology to advance a bit more as it relates to power and battery life, and then better technology and mobile charging is an answer. Question 4 is, which pieces of equipment would be the most challenging to switch to electric? Heavy equipment. Fertilizer application machines, none exist. And lawnmowers. Price. Lawnmowers, leaf blowers, string trimmers, chainsaws, leaf vacuums. Mowers and blowers, chainsaws, heavier duty lawnmowers, bush hogs. We have had good success with blowers and trimmers, large mowers, equipment.
During the February 20th meeting of the Richland Bean Blossom School Board, Assistant Superintendent Matt Irwin gave his regular report.
Starting out with the education fund, there's a lot of different updates as far as just some of the things that came in with different counts. So you'll recognize some difference in some of the revenues as they come in. Our December 1 count was a little bit different than last year, so it decreased a little bit, and that's just based on different categories of disability for students have different levels of funding. And then our ADM, as a reflection of our February ADM, that is not something that they've actually given us the actual numbers on yet, but that's something that I put my best projection on that as far as what that'll look like. They reconcile that during the last few months of the first 6 months of the year there in April, May, and June. So between those two things, there'll be a little bit of some reconciliation going on with those two different counts till they get caught up, and then we'll go on from there. That latter half of the last 6 months, I did not change the projection in that because there's still a lot to go there as far as what the legislature does as we get updates seemingly every day or every week about what it is that they're talking about. And so that and our student count. So like I told you before, that's a flat line projection of enrollment based on our fall count of last year with like 2.5% increase in foundation and things like that. So there'll be more to come on that. Obviously, every month we continue to update those. Expenses were a little bit lower than projected, which is good. We'll kind of rein those in as we get through the first couple months of the year. Our interest on investments stayed really high in the education fund, just as interest rates have stayed high for us there. So that's been a good thing for us, and that will continue to be a good thing as long as they stay that high. So I'm not going to continue to project that forward. I might start being a little bit more aggressive with that because, as you can see, if that trend continued through the entire year, that'd be a drastic difference in that. So we'll probably start to take a closer look at that as the months come on.
Superintendent Dr. Jerry Sanders delivered his report, providing a variety of noteworthy calendar items for the school system.
There are just some important dates coming up that I wanted to make the board aware of. And some of those dates are related to assessment windows. We are in the middle of the WIDA assessment, which is the assessment we give to our English language learners to determine if they're making progress in learning English. And I think we're pretty much done with that, but the window closes February 24th. SAT windows, March 1st through the 3rd. iRead 3 is March 6th through the 17th. And the iLearn assessment, grades 3 through 8, will be April 12th through May 17th. Some other important dates are the window for enrollment for our preschool, which will start at on March 1st at 10 o'clock. And last year that we filled up our numbers by 10:30, so we'll see what happens this year. And then a little correction in my report, it's they're going to have an open house for prospective families on Monday, February 27th from 4 to 6 p.m. And then Kindergarten Welcome Week, which was a great success last year from Mrs. Whitaker and her staff, will be March 27th through the 31st. And there'll be a guided tour at the open house on March 31st from 6:15 to 8:15. And that just kind of is the start of when the school really starts to communicate with the parents, and they encourage the parents from that point on to be engaged as much as possible, to stay connected with what's going on with the schools, because we want them to be successful and get off to a great start. And Brenda, I don't know if you want to say anything about last year, but it was really, I thought, really well done last year. And so I'm looking forward to another great year with that.
The next RBB School Board meeting will take place on March 27th. And we'll have more from CATSweek right after this.
I'm at risk of thinking there's just no point in trying.
I'm at risk of looking in the mirror and hating what I see.
I'm at risk of being told not to tell.
But with Girls Inc. in my corner,
I will not be another statistic.
I will fight for myself.
With you in my corner, I will win.
Fuel her fire and she will change the world. Girls Inc.
Welcome back to CATSweek. During the February 20th meeting of the Community Justice Response Committee, ACLU of Indiana Director Ken Falk emphasized the need for a new jail to the committee.
You need a new jail. Everyone knows that. Back in 2008, when I filed the lawsuit, everyone knew that. The jail then was grossly overcrowded. It is not now, thanks to the work of the judges and everyone else in the system. But it is, as the report that you guys commissioned that was just referred to, it is, the report noted, it is evident that the Monroe County Jail has exceeded its structural and functional life cycle. It is, if you contrast the jail, and I did watch the presentation that the sheriff's office put on at your meeting in January, and I saw the pictures, but forget the pictures, forget everything. Just look at architecture. I'm a lawyer. I've been involved, I was just writing them down, at least 10 cases involving county jails. I'm not an architect, but I can tell you what happened between the time this jail was built, and I think this jail was in bad shape the minute it was built because of being on top of the courthouse, but the time this jail was built and jails now, and those of you who've gone to other jails have undoubtedly seen this, jails are now being built in a system where you have basically pods. You will have everything on one floor. You will have a central control area. You will have radiating out like slices of the pie living quarters. That gives the ability of the staff in that control area or even in the units themselves to have eye-to-eye contact on prisoners. The problems with old jails, even jails that are not silly, which I think putting a jail on top of an existing building was silly. The problem is they were linear. And when you have a linear jail, you can't see what you can't see. And even if there is adequate cameras around, and historically Monroe County has had problems with that because of the age, every prisoner will tell you, if you ask them and they're honest with you, within 2 minutes where the spots are where there's no camera. That's where people go to fight. That's where people go to do things. And unless you have a human being in every cell, which obviously you don't, you're going to have problems. And it's a dangerous, dangerous situation.
Falk informed the committee about a lawsuit the ACLU filed in 2008 against the county.
We had the case in 2008. It's a class action, meaning that I represent all the prisoners in the jail then and now. We employed Ed Cohn to be our expert. Ed was a great guy. He was the former commissioner of the DOC. Not exactly a big ACLU guy, but a straight shooter. He went through the jail. I'll always remember this. And at one point, Ed was taller than I am. He just reached up and grabbed stuff off the ceiling. He touched insulation on the pipes. You can't have that in a jail. You can't have wires exposed. You can't have dripping water. You can't have that. And what Ed said in his report to the court or to me was that construction of a new jail is necessary. So we filed this private settlement agreement in 2009, and it's called a private settlement agreement because it's not a court order, it's not confidential. And it required a population cap and required notice to be given when we approached the cap. And to this day, I receive daily population reports. And as I said, the population's down. But the expectation of everyone back in 2009 was there would be a new jail.
Monroe County Council member Jennifer Crossley expressed frustration with leadership's slow response when the lawsuit was filed.
I know you just mentioned that it kept getting extended year after year.
Yep.
And I guess my question is how, it's frustrating that folks that were empowered during that time didn't do what was necessary. And now all of a sudden we're here. But maybe everything happens for a reason. So that's why we're here. But I guess I was just curious to see why it got extended.
Sure.
And then the other part to that is I've heard from various sources, but since you are the expert and you are sitting here in front of us, there's lots of rumor mills of what will happen if this expires next year and we've not done anything. I guess, can you talk to those points?
Falk noted the lawsuit was considered a private settlement agreement, meaning that it's not subject to judicial enforcement.
What generally happens with private settlement agreements is that the defendants or the county view that as binding, as they should, and use that to keep the lid on while the new jail is being built. In only one of the counties that I ever sued did we have a private settlement agreement that did not result in a new jail. I think that was in Grant. All the other counties that I mentioned, there are others, resulted in new jails. If the private settlement agreement goes away, it goes away, and there's nothing left. What that means, of course, is at this point, I represent all the prisoners in the jail. They are not going to be able to file a new lawsuit because we have this private settlement agreement in place. If it goes away, nothing will stop another lawsuit from being filed for an injunction, an order to stop what's going on, an order as we have in Allen County, where we have a judge saying the conditions here are unconstitutional. It's a binding order, and you're gonna fix it. So that's the alternative.
County Commissioner Lee Jones asked what the worst case scenario would be if a new lawsuit were to be filed.
I mean, what's the worst that can happen? Well, the worst that can happen is, as in Allen County, you are found to have an unconstitutional jail. You end up owing attorney's fees, even though I work for free. The ACLU gets paid for my time. The attorney's fees are capped under the Prison Litigation Reform Act, so it's not as much as it could be, but you have to pay attorney's fees. But probably more importantly, and defendants don't seem to consider this, if a court finds that the conditions in the jail are unconstitutional, and have been, every person who's been in that jail for the last 2 years, because that's the statute of limitations in Indiana, can sue you for damages for being confined in unconstitutional conditions. The advantage to the private settlement agreement, of course, is there's no admission or finding of unconstitutionality. But if a court makes that finding, then that hurdle in a lawsuit having to prove unconstitutional conditions has been removed. And you know, and as I said, from a human condition, something bad is going to happen in that jail. Because number one, frequently something bad happens in the best of jails, and this is not the best of jails. And this has no reflection on the sheriff, who obviously is pedaling as hard as he can, and his staff. But if you're dealing with an antiquated facility that has bad sightlines with unhappy people, something bad can happen. And you don't want that to happen.
The Community Justice Response Committee will discuss more during their next meeting at 4:30 p.m. on March 6th. And that's all for CATSweek. Thanks for joining us. For CATS and WFHB, I'm Martin O'Neill.